Hey there, it's been a while. Well, today I'll be reading The Foal Who Cried Mama, written by Dragonus 111. The funeral itself was lovely. Pinkie Pie had managed to even make a funeral look lively with her decorations, and the weather was nice enough. Cloudy, but not raining, and only a little windy. Applejack and Big Mac were the first ponies allowed up to the open casket. Applejack started to cry and began blaming herself for not being there when the accident happened. But Big Mac quickly hugged her and escorted her away. Next, Granny Smith carried a nearly asleep Apple Bloom, all bundled up, and walked up to the casket to pay her respects. She quickly turned away as Apple Bloom became fully awake to avoid letting her see her parents like that. As far as the rest of the Apple family knew, Apple Bloom had no idea what was going on, being an incredibly young foal. After some nice words were said by other Apple family members, the casket began their descent into the earth, and the ponies departed. The work schedule dredged on at the farm. As the next few days went on, Applejack grieved the most over her parents, still blaming herself somewhat for skipping out on her family chores to go to one of Pinkie Pie's parties, thinking if she was there she could have prevented the horrible tragedy. It was a night out on the Apple family ranch as Applejack and Big Mac were finishing up their day's worth of apple bucking. It wasn't that dark, and there was a full moon out among the starlit sky, but it was quiet, almost too quiet. Big Mac, always the silent type, but now even Applejack worked quietly without speaking a word, as only 2 weeks had passed since the funeral, their parents' funeral. Applejack couldn't tell their parents' passing affected Big Mac, as his silence allowed for a little emotion, but Applejack was so sick of feeling remorseful and depressed that she forced herself into feeling nothing at all, not even happiness. When spending time with her friends, this tactic seemed to work well enough so far. Apple Bloom, though, seemed to be too young to be affected by the situation. Barely a year old, her parents at least got to experience her first birthday and hear her first word, which was Mama. But tonight proved she knew they were gone. Applejack suddenly could hear faint cries of a young pony echoing through the orchard, and they appeared to originate from their home. "Big Mac, do you hear that?" Big Mac just bucked another apple tree and then paused to listen for a moment as he placed a hoof under his chin. "Yep." "Then come with me. I think little A.B.'s crying, and we have to check on her." Applejack and her brother abandoned their apple baskets as they galloped back to their home, which was easy to see as the lit windows contrasted the dark sky. As they approached, Applejack could now clearly tell it was Apple Bloom as they made it to the front porch. Applejack and Big Mac jumped into the entry room as the door flung open and noticed Granny Smith was asleep in a rocking chair, only as the most random noises would ever wake her from a nap. Applejack then furiously made her way up the stairs to the second floor with Big Mac in tow, as that it were Apple Bloom's nursery was located. When they made it to the top of the stairs, Apple Bloom's cries could now be heard clearly, which were cries for Mama. Upon reaching it, Applejack and Big Mac just stood in shock at the doorway, as they watched their little sister flailing in her crib, crying and calling out for her mother. "I got this, Big Mac. Just go and try to wake up Granny Smith." Big Mac nodded and walking down the stairs. Applejack then approached Apple Bloom's crib and reared up on her hind legs to hang her forelegs over the side. She then started to gently rock the crib back and forth as she said, "There, there, Apple Bloom. Your big sis Applejack is here. Please." "Mama!" Applejack could see that Apple Bloom had been crying for a while now, as her face was bright red and her blanket was stained with tears. Applejack continued rocking the crib and again tried to calm down her bawling in between her cries. "Please calm down, Apple Bloom. Mom can't come back, and we both—" "Mama! Mama! Ma! Apple Bloom, big ponies don't cry! Ma!" Startled by Applejack's shout, Apple Bloom let out a small squeak and stopped crying. She looked up at her sister with the saddest face, a look of feeling lost and lonely in her big, Brayburn color eyes. "Mama?" "I know, Apple Bloom. I wish Ma and Pa were here also, but they are gone now. Don't worry, though. Big Mac and I are here for you. So's Granny Smith." Apple Bloom let a small smile emerge onto her face as she reached up her forelegs up to Applejack, a sign she wanted to be picked up. Apple Bloom still had to communicate by either pointing at things or making other motions with her legs, that she can't say much than one word in her vocabulary. She seemed to be really picking up on things after learning her first word, but appeared not to care for learning since the funeral. Applejack obliged and lifted Apple Bloom up and then laid the filly across her back. Applejack then paced around the room as she gently bounced Apple Bloom in an attempt to console her even more. After a few minutes, Apple Bloom stretched her legs in every direction as she let out a large, drawn-out yawn, a signal she was ready to go back to sleep. Applejack noticed and fetched her pacifier from the crib. Apple Bloom near instantly fell asleep as she started sucking on her pacifier, which was usually a surefire way to get her to go to bed. Applejack felt the weight of the day catch up to her, and she grew sleepy herself. So she decided to sleep with Apple Bloom there in the nursery tonight. After blowing out the candle, Applejack curled up in the rug on the room and placed Apple Bloom beside her. In her sleep, Apple Bloom instinctively snuggled up to Applejack and nuzzled her chest. Shortly after, Applejack drifted off to sleep herself. Whack! Rattle, rattle, rattle. Applejack. Huh? What? Whack! Rattle, rattle, rattle. Applejack! Ouch, what in tarnation? A groggy Applejack opened her eyes to see a giggling Apple Bloom sitting up in front of her, holding a rattle. Applejack was just glad to see Apple Bloom happy again.